I've always believed that numbers never lie. For 40 years, I worked as an accountant, meticulous, predictable, and proud of it. My late husband, Daniel, used to tease me, saying that if I could balance emotions the way I balanced budgets, I'd be the happiest woman alive. When he passed away 6 years ago, I thought I'd done everything right. I had a plan, a will, and a home in the quiet Chicago suburbs that we built together brick by brick. The house wasn't just wood and concrete. It was where Daniel's laughter still echoed through the hallways, where we raised our 2 sons, Adam, the eldest, and Michael, the younger one with the gentle heart. At 72, I kept my routines. Morning coffee by the window, crossword at 9, and ledger review at noon. I wasn't lonely, just contained. I believed my sons respected what their father and I built. Adam, the eldest, had always been ambitious, too ambitious sometimes. He inherited Daniel's charm, but not his humility. He worked in real estate, always chasing the next big deal. Michael was quieter, teaching history at a local community college. If you asked me 5 years ago which of my boys would ever betray me, I would have laughed. Adam had his flaws, yes, but I thought his loyalty was unshakable. That illusion started to crumble one cold December evening. It was the annual family dinner, our first one without Daniel's presence at the head of the table. The house was warm with the smell of roasted chicken and cinnamon, but the air between Adam and me had grown tense. He arrived late in his tailored coat and restless energy, his wife already frowning at her phone. Michael helped me set the table while Adam poured himself a glass of wine and said almost casually, "Mom, we really should talk about the property deeds soon. It's time to think about practical matters." The way he said it, practical matters, sent a quiet chill through me. I smiled, pretending not to understand. But somewhere deep down I knew. Something in him had shifted. That was the first whisper of what was coming. The betrayal that would break what was left of our family trust. It happened 3 weeks after that dinner, on a Thursday that began like any other. I remember the exact time, 9:42 a.m. The winter light filtered through my kitchen curtains as I balanced my checkbook, humming an old Sinatra tune. The phone rang. Not Adam's voice this time, but his wife's, Claire. Her tone was syrupy sweet, but something in it made my stomach tighten. "Hi, Mom," she said, using that word like a tool rather than affection. "Adam's in meetings all morning, but he asked me to check that you signed the papers he left last week." I frowned. "Papers? What papers?" "Oh, just a few ownership updates for the house. Standard procedure for estate planning. You must have forgotten. He said you were fine with it." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Ownership updates?" I repeated slowly. "Claire, I haven't signed anything." She hesitated. Too long. Then she laughed nervously. "Oh, maybe Adam handled it. Don't worry, it's all under control." When I hung up, my hand was shaking. I opened the file cabinet in my study, the one Daniel and I always kept locked. The original deed, the one we signed 35 years ago, was still there. But beside it sat a new envelope, printed with the letterhead of A&M Realty Group, Adam's company. Inside were fresh documents. My name appeared only once, at the top under the word transferor. His was listed as sole owner. The date? The day after our family dinner. For a long time, I just stood there, staring at my own signature. Except it wasn't mine. The signature looped wrong. The E in my name curled upward. I always curved mine down. He had forged it. My own son. The air felt thin. I sank into Daniel's old chair, clutching the papers as if they could still mean something else. My hands trembled. "No," I whispered. "He wouldn't." But he had. When I checked the county records online, my heart dropped. The title transfer was already filed. My home, the one I built with my husband, no longer belonged to me. That night, Michael stopped by after class. He found me sitting at the dining table with every light on. "Mom," he said softly, "you haven't eaten." I slid the papers toward him. He read in silence, his jaw tightening, his eyes dark with disbelief. "Adam did this?" I nodded. "Then we fix it," he said, quietly. He didn't know it yet, but that word, quietly, would become my weapon. Because even as my heart broke, another part of me began to count. To calculate. To remember that numbers never lie, but people often do. And I had no intention of letting my son get away with rewriting my life like an entry in his ledger. That night, sleep didn't come. I lay awake listening to the house creak in the cold, the ticking of the wall clock echoing through the silence. Every sound reminded me that this place, this sanctuary Daniel and I built, no longer belonged to me. At least not on paper. Around 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and walked to the study. I turned on the old banker's lamp, its green glass shade casting that familiar glow across the oak desk. The papers sat exactly where I'd left them. I studied every detail again, the stamp, the notary seal, the slanted ink of the signature that mocked my name. It wasn't just forgery. It was arrogance. Adam thought I wouldn't notice. He thought his 72-year-old mother would be too tired, too trusting, too sentimental to look closely. He underestimated me. I opened the metal box beneath the desk, my personal archive. Inside were decades of records, tax statements, old ledgers, mortgage payments, and property valuations. I flipped through them methodically, the way I used to when balancing a client's accounts. My mind, once clouded by heartbreak, began to click into precision again. There it was, the joint mortgage payoff from 1998, the notarized letter from our bank officer confirming that Daniel and I owned the property free and clear. Adam had no legal basis to transfer what wasn't his. But when I compared his fraudulent documents to the digital copy filed with the county, I realized something worse. He had bribed someone inside the records office. The file had been expedited and digitally signed using credentials not typically accessible to the public. This wasn't an accident. It was a plan. I remember whispering aloud, "You clever boy, you really thought you'd outsmart me." For 2 days, I said nothing. I went about my routine, watering the plants, attending my weekly bridge game, smiling politely as if my world hadn't cracked. Inside, I was collecting evidence. By the 3rd night, I found something Adam had completely forgotten about. An old folder labeled Daniel Spanish Property. I froze. Daniel had bought a small coastal villa in Spain nearly 2 decades ago, planning for us to retire there one day. I'd forgotten it existed. The paperwork had been finalized in my name only because of Daniel's business travels at the time. The villa was modest, but valuable now. The market had tripled in that region. I opened the deeds and ran my finger over the embossed seal. Registered solely under my name. My heart steadied for the first time in days. In that moment, the narrative shifted. Adam might have stolen my home on paper, but he had no idea I still held an asset worth far more, one he couldn't touch, one he didn't even know existed. That realization reignited something in me. It wasn't just about property anymore. It was about principle. I spent the next morning reviewing my old contact list. Among the names was Evelyn Carter, an attorney I'd worked with years ago during a client's estate audit. She was sharp, discreet, and owed me a favor for uncovering errors that saved her firm thousands. I called her office at exactly 11:47 a.m. "Evelyn," I said, my voice calm but deliberate. "I think my son forged my signature and stole my property. I need to know my options, and I want to do this quietly." There was a brief silence, then she replied, "Mrs. Lane, send me everything. I'll call the county clerk before noon, and don't speak to him until we know exactly what he's done." By the time we ended the call, my living room table looked like a battlefield of papers, files and notes, every piece of evidence arranged by date, transaction, and signature style. When I glanced out the window, I saw Adam's car pull into the driveway. He hadn't called first. He never did anymore. He walked in with that casual arrogance I used to mistake for confidence. "Mom, I just came to check if you're okay," he said, dropping his keys on the counter. "Claire told me you sounded confused." That word sliced through me like glass. I forced a smile. "I'm perfectly fine, Adam. Just going through some old files." He glanced at the papers spread out but didn't say a word. His eyes flicked nervously toward the deed folder, but I placed my hand over it before he could reach. "You should be careful," I said softly. "Numbers and names have a way of revealing the truth when people least expect it." He smirked, shrugged, and left. When the door closed, I finally exhaled. My plan was forming, slow, deliberate, and precise. That night, as the clock struck 3:17 a.m., I sat in the quiet study again, staring at the villa documents. It felt poetic, the hour of betrayal becoming the hour of strategy. Because if Adam wanted to play with paperwork, he was about to learn who taught him how to read it in the first place. The next morning felt different. The air itself seemed sharper, colder, but clear, like the fog of heartbreak had finally lifted. For the first time in weeks, I brewed coffee with purpose. I sat down at the kitchen table with my notebook, labeling the top of the page, Operation Restore What's Mine. Old accountants like me don't make rash moves. We plan. Step 1, document everything. Step 2, establish motive. Step 3, control the narrative before it controls you. I called Evelyn again. She'd already done her research. "Mrs. Lane," she said, her tone brisk but respectful. "The forgery is evident. We have enough to prove fraud. But if we go public right away, Adam will bury the evidence under corporate privilege." "So we wait," I said. "Exactly. You let him believe he's won. Meanwhile, we build an airtight case, and that's what we did." Over the next 10 days, I moved quietly, methodically. I went through old emails, texts, and documents. I found digital traces, drafts of transfer letters sent from Adam's assistant's account, recorded calls from the notary who verified the signature, and one damning voice message where Adam bragged to his partner, "She'll never notice. She's too sentimental to check. I'll flip the property next quarter and we'll both cash out." That was all I needed. I forwarded everything to Evelyn. She worked discreetly with a private investigator she trusted, a retired records officer named Dale Whitmore. He confirmed the county document had indeed been tampered with. Access logs showed Adam's firm's credentials. Meanwhile, I played the part of the oblivious old woman. When Adam and Claire dropped by, I smiled, poured tea, asked about their weekend trips. I listened as he bragged about expanding his business and diversifying investments. Not once did I let my eyes flicker toward the stolen papers tucked neatly inside my desk drawer. But inside, every word he spoke added another brick to my wall of evidence. By the second week, Evelyn called with a proposal. We could go to court, but there's a faster way. We file a quiet title action. It stays sealed until judgment. He won't know what's happening until the property is legally back in your name. I smiled for the first time in days. "Let's do it." While she prepared the filing, I focused on something else, Daniel's Spanish villa. I contacted a local agent there, Marcos Alvarez, explaining that I wanted to sell the property quickly but confidentially. Within 48 hours, he found a buyer, a retired architect from Barcelona. The offer came in well above market value. When the deal closed, I transferred a portion of the funds into a trust under Michael's name, my younger son, the one who stood beside me when the storm broke. The rest I held in reserve, not out of spite, but for what I knew was coming, because no matter how justified justice feels, it always comes with noise. And I wanted to be prepared for the echo. 3 weeks later, Evelyn called again. "It's done." The court accepted the quiet title action. The judge reviewed the evidence, the forged signature, the notary logs, and issued a reversal. The property is legally yours again. I sat in silence, the weight of those words sinking in. For months, I had carried the grief of betrayal, the sting of deceit. Now, justice wasn't loud or cinematic. It was quiet, dignified, and deeply satisfying. But Evelyn wasn't finished. One more thing, she added. The county's internal audit traced the login credentials to Adam's assistant, but under his direct authorization. They'll be contacting him soon. You should prepare for that. I thanked her and hung up. Then, I did something I hadn't done since Daniel's passing. I poured myself a small glass of wine, sat by the living room window, and watched the sunset. It was peaceful. Not triumphant, not bitter, just peaceful, until my phone rang. The clock read 3:17 a.m. It was Adam. His voice was shaking, raw, desperate. Mom, please. I didn't know it'd go this far. The police called tonight. They said there's an investigation into document tampering. I didn't mean to. I let him speak. For the first time, I didn't interrupt. You forged my name, Adam, I said quietly. You sold the house your father built with his bare hands. He began to cry. I just wanted to fix the debts, Mom. The business was falling apart, and Claire, she pushed me to do it. I thought I could fix it before you noticed. There it was, the confession. Not clean, but real. You could have asked me, I said. You could have trusted me. Instead, you stole from me and called it help. Silence. Then, can I come over? I hesitated. My heart, that foolish, motherly heart, still loved him. But love without accountability is just weakness in disguise. No, Adam, I said softly. Not tonight. You need to sit with what you've done. You'll be fine. But only when you learn the cost of what you tried to take. He cried harder, whispering apologies that came too late. When I hung up, I didn't feel anger. I felt release. I walked to the study, opened the folder labeled Villa Sold, and looked at the confirmation of funds transferred to Michael's trust. Everything was where it needed to be. Justice, I realized, isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about restoration, quiet, deliberate restoration. The next morning, I met Michael for breakfast. He smiled as I handed him a small envelope. Inside was a letter of transfer for the new trust account. Mom, what's this? Security, I said. For you, for the future. Your brother made his choices. You made yours. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. Will you ever forgive him? I sighed, stirring my coffee. Forgiveness isn't a gift, sweetheart. It's a process. But I'll start with peace. And peace begins with truth. By that evening, I returned home. The house, my house, felt different now. The air was lighter, the walls warmer, as if the very foundation knew it had been reclaimed by the one who truly loved it. I walked into Daniel's old study, ran my hand across his chair and whispered, We did it, my love. We protected what mattered. The lamp glowed faintly, the same way it had on all those nights I'd worked late while he read by the window. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. For the first time in months, I didn't feel that heavy stone of dread pressing against my chest. The air in my bedroom felt new, lighter, warmer. Outside, the garden Daniel and I planted years ago was in bloom again. Roses, white ones, his favorite. It's strange how peace creeps in quietly, after all the storms. I made my morning tea and sat by the kitchen window, the same window where I had once watched Adam and Michael play in the yard, chasing after their father's old soccer ball. They were so small back then, so full of laughter, of promise. Now one of them carried my heart gently in his hands. The other had crushed it and was trying, in his own broken way, to gather the pieces. 2 weeks passed before I heard from Adam again. He came by unannounced one Sunday morning, dressed in clothes that didn't fit his usual image. No sharp blazer, no expensive watch, no polished shoes. just a plain shirt and eyes that looked years older. I didn't open the door right away. I stood behind the lace curtain, watching him shift nervously on the porch. Finally, I turned the knob. He looked at me, not with arrogance this time, not even with guilt. With shame. "Mom," he said softly, I wanted to see you." I stepped aside without a word. He walked in slowly, looking around the house as though it were a museum of memories. His hand brushed the framed photos. Him at graduation, the boys on their first fishing trip with Daniel, the family Christmas where we all wore matching sweaters. "I remember this," he murmured, touching the photo of the four of us. "You made those sweaters by hand?" "Yes," I said. "Because we couldn't afford store-bought ones that year." He nodded, eyes downcast. The silence stretched between us like an invisible bridge, broken but not beyond repair. Finally, he spoke. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I've ruined my business." Claire left. The house deal fell apart after the investigation, and I know I deserve whatever comes next. I looked at him carefully. "And what do you think that is, Adam?" He swallowed hard. "Losing you." For a moment I couldn't breathe. He wasn't asking for money or for rescue. He was asking for forgiveness. I motioned for him to sit at the kitchen table. We sat across from each other, just as we did when he was a teenager, grounded for sneaking out past curfew. Only this time, the stakes were heavier. "You hurt me deeply," I said. "Not because of the house, but because you saw me as weak. You thought I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't fight back." He looked up, his voice trembling. "I know. I thought I was protecting the family, saving the business. But I was just taking what wasn't mine." I reached for my cup of tea, staring into the steam. "You're my son. You'll always be. But being forgiven doesn't mean forgetting. It means I trust you to learn." He nodded slowly. "I want to." Then quietly, I slid a small folded paper across the table, the court's title reinstatement. His eyes widened when he saw the official seal. "You got it back," he whispered. "Yes," I said. "And I sold it." He blinked in confusion. "Sold? But why?" "Because I wanted peace, not property. I wanted to end this chapter before it consumed me." He sat there stunned. "So, it's gone?" "It's gone," I said simply. "But so is the lie. What's left is what we decide to rebuild, if we choose to." Tears rolled down his cheeks. He reached across the table, his hand trembling. I hesitated, then placed mine over his. The warmth of that moment didn't erase the pain, but it softened it. That evening after he left, I stood by the garden again. The sky was a deep gold, the kind of light Daniel always said forgives the world. Michael called later that night. "How did it go, Mom?" "Better than I expected," I said. "He's lost much, but maybe that's how people find themselves again." "You're too kind," Michael sighed. "Kindness isn't weakness," I said. "It's knowing when to stop fighting." There was silence on the line. Then Michael said something that stayed with me. "Dad would be proud of you." After we hung up, I walked into Daniel's old study and opened the drawer where his fountain pen still rested. The one he used to sign every important paper in our life, mortgage, wills, even love letters he'd write and hide around the house for me to find. I picked it up, inked it carefully, and opened my journal. They say the cruelest betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people we love the most. But what they forget to say is that love doesn't end there. It bends, it bruises, it cries, but it also teaches. My son stole a house from me, but in the end, I got something far greater back. My strength, my peace, and the truth that I can still stand tall at 72. Sometimes justice isn't a courtroom or a punishment. Sometimes it's a quiet morning where your heart finally feels light again. Weeks later, I received a letter. It was from Adam, handwritten this time. Inside was a short note. "Mom, I've started working at a community housing center. They help families facing eviction. I wanted you to know I'm trying to make things right. Maybe not with money, But with time, I love you, Adam. I folded the letter and placed it in the same box where I kept Daniel's old notes. Maybe that's what healing looks like at this age, not starting over, but learning how to carry what's left with grace. As the camera fades, I'd want the audience to see what I saw that evening. The sunset reflecting softly on the kitchen window, a gentle smile on my face, and the whispered thought that ties it all together. He took my house, yes, but he'll never take the woman who built it. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you loved the most, remember, revenge doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply rebuilding your peace louder than their deceit.